Hey guys, this is Mike
And
from Deep Wood Force of Will.
deep wood.
And we're coming at you guys with episode 3 of our ruler guide. This time we're looking at the third set from Alice Cluster, the Moonlit Savior.
It was a pretty fun set.
Yep.
It was probably the set where I spent the most time playing in this game, so it's a good place for me to talk.
And we'll go over your talking points. I'll let you actually have one of the rulers out of this if you want to just yammer on about it.
I'll try not to yammer too much.
Alright, perfect. So we'll start off on a decent note. We got Friend from Another World Kaguya, also Kaguya the Moonlit Savior, basically the poster child for the set, besides somebody else we'll see later.
Yeah, and she's a dual-colored ruler, so that was pretty interesting. She's the second dual-color ruler besides Blazer, right?
Yeah, but we also
And
technically
Sylvia.
had, Sylvia, and we also had the two Alices.
Right, that's true too. Okay, so maybe we had a couple of them.
Yeah, but she's the one, I think she's one of the only ones with the dual colors on her front side.
Ah, okay, that's important to note.
Oh, anyway, enough of that. She judgments for 3, which is 1 white, 1 moon, and 1 colorless.
And her front side says you may spend moon as though it were green, so that's pretty unique. It's important to note that moon isn't actually a color of will. It basically acts as colorless for anything, but since you're playing Kage, you get to play it as green, so it becomes a useful color.
Exactly. And then whenever a moon enters your field, no matter if it's an addition, a resonator, or anything of the sort, you may draw a card. This is pretty cool for one of her support cards that will be coming up later in this video.
Unfortunately, it just doesn't apply to very many useful cards, so
Right. So
it's
you don't
not
really
that
get
great.
to reap those benefits.
Yeah.
Now when she
On her-
flips, she becomes a 7/9. You retain that ability to spend moon as though it were green. Whenever you awaken a card, you put 2 +1/+1 counters on her. So
Oh, always good.
always good to get +1/+1 counters, and a lot of her stuff really lends itself well to the awakening costs of cards.
Yeah. And one of the best features on this card is the next line, which is you can spend moon to cancel target automatic ability. And that works on enters, it works on trigger effects, it works on automatic things that happen like when you attack. There's a lot of really good effects that are just automatic abilities, so she gets a lot of mileage out of that.
Yep, exactly. Then you can pay 2 white and a colorless to prevent the next damage that we dealt to her this turn. That's pretty cool because you can keep her longevity up, you can make sure that she stays up to cancel any abilities that you need to get cancelled, and having her stick's pretty good especially because of that God's Art down there.
Which is a pretty good one. It's Light of the Sacred Moon, Light, Moon, and 3 colorless. A little expensive, but it does a lot. Rest all J resonators your opponent controls, then recover all magic stones you control, and you may pay 1 less for awakening this turn as long as it's Moon that you're paying less for.
But with most of Kaguya's support, the awakening is moon.
Yeah, so it winds up being pretty good for her. And you wind up spending 5, but then you get all 5 of that back. If you do it towards the end of your turn, you get even more back, so it's even better.
There's a lot of value that comes out of that, but again, it's pretty situational a lot of the time. You need to make sure that you have the awakening cost cards to reap the full benefits.
And it's kind of like the reverse of Faria's Judgment, but it doesn't kill them, which is the
Right.
problem with it.
So, obviously we see that Kaguya has a lot of effects, but it's a lot of tools that don't really do much, if we want to say that.
When you look at her support, you wind up seeing that she has a hard time getting towards a late game kill option.
Exactly.
Most of the time, your opponent's just going to concede from resource loss or
Yep.
inability to play before actually being killed by Kaguya.
Exactly. So, moving on to her support cards, we have some pretty cool support for her. First one is her Regalia, which is Interdimensional Vessel Apollo. Your J Ruler gains flying, always good. It's the only Regalia that actually gives flying to a J Ruler.
Yeah, it was a really hyped effect since it allowed like Valentina to be able to hit in the air, which is a big deal back then.
Oh yeah. You can also tap to produce moon, but that moon will is restricted to awakening costs, or judgment or God's Arts of J Rulers with Kaguya in their name. So this counts the Moonlit Savior's Kaguya, who we're talking about right now, and also Kaguyas from older sets such as Kaguya 1.0, Kaguya 2.0. But those only really relevant, literally only relevant in Wanderer. Please make sure you note, though, this is something I didn't note when I first started playing Kaguya. You can't use this to pay for her cancel target automatic ability effect.
Yeah, and the mirror of this Regalia, which belongs to a ruler later in the set, does, and that made it a little bit confusing at first.
Yep, definitely. But you can use it to get a judgment off earlier. You can use it to pay for that God's Art. So you get some pretty cool stuff with it.
Yep.
And then the last effect is to banish it and return target resonator you control to its owner's hand. That's a pretty
Always
cool
have,
effect.
Yeah, anytime you have that banish this card effect, so you can do whatever with the Regalia means that you can dodge Heras, and that's always amazing. And also just returning a target resonator to your hand is really good, so you can redo the Enter or the Awakening or whatever you want to do with that resonator, or just save it from some removal spell.
Exactly, especially that Awakening, because getting the Awakenings over and over on Kaguya's resonators is actually very high tempo. Moving on, we've got Moonbreeze Elf, which is a carbon copy of a card called Elvish Priest, which was around back in Wanderer format. Except she produces Moon by tapping herself, so she has a will production ability, and she has the effect that she cannot be attacked, which is really good for something that continuously rests itself.
When she first came out, she was almost a straight improvement for most decks over Elvish Priest, but Elvish Priest, of course, produced green, which meant that in decks that didn't play Kaguya, you could do Elvish Priest into Wall of Wind, so it made a big deal to still use Elvish Priest, but Moonbreeze Elf still had her perks.
Yep, especially because once Elvish Priest left the metagame and went off to Wanderer format while we were still in New Frontiers, Moonbreeze Elf was then the only card that allowed for a first turn summon Moonbreeze Elf into Wall of Wind, and that was only if you were playing Kaguya. So Kaguya had her perks when you really couldn't mana fix that well. Her mana fixing was just really relevant.
Yeah.
However, this is no longer the case since we got a Sacred Elf at the beginning of Lapis Cluster, which is basically a 2/3 that produces green by tapping itself for 1 mana, so straight improvement from Elvish Priest, sort of. It's a reworking of Elvish Priest, but it's basically the same principle, so Moonbreeze Elf has kind of fallen off the map. Kaguya's mana fix doesn't really matter as much anymore, so...
You will see her in Machina, though, so that's important.
Yeah, that's very important. You see a lot of different types of dorks in Machina.
Of course.
And then over on the side there, Tsukiyomi Noble is Kaguya's biggest support card, we would say.
Yep, you get a lot of things in one package with Tsukiyomi Noble. It's for 2 white, you get a 5/7, which is basically premium stats. I think it's 7/7 is direct premium, but we don't have any 2-mana 7/7s really. I think we got a couple in Lapis actually, but regardless. So the big thing about it is players cannot play activate abilities of resonators they control unless they control a moon. It's important to note that Tsukiyomi Noble is a moon, so you automatically fulfill that effect on your side of the field while you control her.
Also, another thing to note about her is that when you summon her, because she's a moon, Kaguya will draw you a card.
Yep, and that's what makes it really good. So it's a 2-will 5/7 that draws a card and then stuns your opponents a little bit.
And then going on from there, we got the Awakening cost, which is 1. So when Tsukiyomi Noble enters your board, if you pay the extra Moon Will to play it, you can destroy a target non-Moon Edition, and if you do, you put 2 +1/+1 counters on her. So for 3 mana, she pops an addition, and she becomes a 7/9 that still retains that cannot play activate abilities effect and draws a card.
Yeah, unfortunately, since it says target non-Moon Edition, you couldn't play the Moon Edition and then cycle it using her, which was kind of a bummer to Kaguya players. It would have been really good for her.
Yep.
Since you'd be able to play the Moon Edition, draw using Kaguya, then use Tsukiyomi Noble with the Awakening, blow up the edition, you'd get the other draw, and you keep going. It would have been cool, but oh well.
Yep. What can you do?
It's also important to note for that first effect that where it says players cannot play activate abilities of resonators to control. That is actually one of the only effects in the game that can stop a will-producing resonator, because those don't use the chase, so you can't cancel them. And Tsukiyomi Noble just prevents them from trying to activate it in the first place, which is the only way you can stop that. So she has a niche.
Yeah, she got a little niche there, but again, all these cards are very good utility, but a lot of them fall a little short just because the mana fix isn't as important anymore. The game sped up a lot, so you need a lot of value out of a Resonator before it can be used, and Tsukiyomi Noble is a lot, but isn't the greatest Resonator, we would say.
I think it's pretty good. The thing is, it's just that you can't run a deck off of only 2 drops. Well, besides Lancelot. Lancelot is insane.
So with all that in mind, we've given Kaguya a B-. Again, not the worst grade ever. She's not bad by any means, so feel free to try her out. But again, there's just a lot of wiggle room that you have to mess with before you can get her to work well.
Right. And you got cancels, that's basically your whole thing in your ramping, but you don't have any way to like stop OTK decks that are ramping, so you got an uphill battle.
Yep. Just like she's traveling uphill here with the bag full of stuff from Zero and Feetsing.
Is that a bag full of stuff, or is that Apollo?
Oh, that's a bag full of stuff.
Oh yeah, is that like Feetsing's hat?
Yep, that's Feetsing's hat. No, actually I think that's Zero's hat and Zero's staff. Zero just gave her everything, man.
Yeah, at least the bunny's helping her.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad. Alright, so that's enough about Kaguya. Let's move on to
Allosaurus.
Allosaurus is one of those rulers that I wish was good just because of the lore behind him.
He's got such cool lore, such cool art. He's got a ton of text on his backside. He was the first like mid-range red ruler ever.
Yep, but unfortunately for the sake of playing red, they don't do mid-range very well.
I mean, we'll see a support in a little bit, and they do it pretty well. It's just that Allosaurus doesn't add to it, which is a real shame.
Exactly. So let's just start on the ruler side. It's a judgment of 14. I'll let that sink in for a moment. Allosaurus stock coming onto the board has a judgment cost of 14, 2 red and 12 void.
And guess what? There's pretty much no other text on him, because the rest of his text just says decrease it.
Yep.
Decrease that judgment cost. So
you
you're playing
to play this ability for each card in your removed area.
You're playing a blank ruler, which is already a bad start for a ruler.
Yep. So now that you've seen that you have to pay 14 unless you make your deck a deck that just turbos out its into the removed area. Let's see what he does.
And first and foremost, he's a 1000/1000, so you get pretty good stats. Unless you count it as 14 well, then it's not good stats at all. You'd need to be like a 10k for him to be 14.
Yep.
Yeah. And he first says, when this card enters your field, search your main deck for a card named Blazing Metropolis Velsivaria, reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle your main deck. Man, you read that, you're like, what the heck does that do? And it's not good, and it doesn't put it into the field for you, so you don't care.
Yep, it's a 4-mana card that just searches it out, so there's almost no benefit to adding it to your hand in the late game.
You'd think that after turboing out your whole deck just so you can go to his judgment side, you would at least get the card for free, but nope.
Nope, not a chance. And then Resonators you control gain Swiftness, Target Attack, and First Strike. Those are good abilities. Honestly, putting keyword abilities onto Resonators is pretty solid.
Yeah, it could be actually kind of ridiculous if you consider that, like, he has a 1-mana 1000/1000.
Which we'll go into later, of course.
Yeah, but just saying. We're
not just going to bring up that statement and be like, hey, he's got a 1-mana 1000/1000. You have to do something to make it 1000/1000, but...
Yeah. Just saying.
And then his God's Art, which is pretty cool. It's 4 mana to do the God's Art, so again, paying 14 and then an extra 4. Oh no. This card deals 100 damage to each J Resonator your opponent controls for each card in your removed area. So again, it's all about that stacking your removed area. And then you may put any number of cards from removed area into your graveyard.
Which is alright, but...
Yeah, he's got ways to recycle stuff.
I mean, you're saying, like, put any number of cards from your removed area into your graveyard, like, this is your end game. Wouldn't you rather have those cards back in your deck so that you can continue playing the game and not deck out?
Yep. You would think so.
Yep, and that's where most of his issues lies. He's really expensive, and he just doesn't do enough.
Yeah, and a lot of the stuff he does is just kind of counterintuitive to the way the deck plays, because once you have your stuff in your removed area, you kind of want to keep it there, because you get a lot of benefits.
there's not really any benefits to having stuff in your grave either.
Yep.
Well, besides Valsafarian will let you play the spells from your grave as with Remnant or something,
Yep,
right?
gives everything Remnant, which is fine, just not worth 4 mana.
It seems like it was like the plan for them to like play the Lightning Strike, Thunder repeatedly with him, but it just never worked out because he was so expensive.
Yep. By the time you even got a chance to start killing your opponent had killed you like 5 turns earlier.
And it's not free or anything, so it's not like it was like, okay, you got the Judgment off. It's like, nope, you still gotta get the will after that to actually do it.
Yep. Just too much to do.
Yep.
So, let's not talk as much about Allosaurus right now, because the really important part about him are his support resonators. The 3 goddesses, Keeper of the Past Earther, Keeper of the Present Verdandi, and Keeper of the Future Skuld.
And these are actually some really good cards. They're all Resonator Goddess, and we'll start with Earther first. She's 3 will, 1 fire. When this card enters your field, you may remove up to 2 cards in your graveyard from the game. If you do, it deals 200 damage multiplied by the combined total cost of the cards removed this way to target J Resonator. That's a really good effect, and there's been some OTKs that work with that effect too, so...
She's got a lot of flexibility.
Yep, she was seen splash into rainbow color decks that were running Ruler's Memoria just because it was a really efficient 3-drop. It was like 8/8 that killed something and banished things, and it was just like you used all your big stuff that you had to kill stuff, which is really good.
And then her other effect is, as long as there are 10 or more cards in your removed area, this card gains +3/+3 and target attack. That's really strong, because bringing her out as an 11/11 with target attack, because she starts off as an 8/8, that can really add up quickly, especially if you have the other goddesses going off of that.
Yeah, but unfortunately getting to 10 cards in your removed area isn't exactly easy.
Yeah.
But at least these cards help with that.
Absolutely. Then moving on to Verdandi. Verdandi is Keeper of the Present. When this card enters your field, you remove a card from your hand from the game, and if you do, draw a card. So she's a mini cycler.
Yeah, I kind of wish that effect was just plastered on the front of Allosaurus. That would have made him so good.
Oh, that would have been unreal.
And it's of course important to note that as long as there are 10 or more cards in your removed area, this card gains +9/+9 and First Strike.
So this is the 1 mana. Yep, this is the 1 mana 1,000 we were talking about before.
And it comes with First Strike, so it's wins every fight in pretty much.
Yep. And the last but certainly not least, Keeper of the Future Skuld. When this card enters your field, remove the top 2 cards from your main deck from the game. This card deals 100 damage multiplied by the combined total cost. Remove this way to target J Resonator. So, again, deals damage based on what you banished. And
of course, Skuld didn't see as much play as Earther because it's random what the top of your deck holds unless you're playing like Shion. But
yep, and it's much less damage too.
Yeah, well, unless you've... Oh yeah, because it's half as much damage, so it's even worse in that manner. Anyway, as long as there are 10 more cards in your removed area, this card gains +3/+3 in Swiftness, so 8/8 with Swiftness for 2 will is pretty good.
Kind of insane, yep. But again,
overall,
moving to 10 cards is tough.
Yeah, but once you do get there, you start being very threatening.
Yep. So again, Goddess is good, Allosaurus very weak. We wish we had seen a better ruler card to go with these support cards, but all in all, we were left with a C- ruler.
Yeah, cool flavor, cool art, but not very practical.
Yep. I mean, I've played with Allosaurus before. I've seen people play with Allosaurus before. He can snowball, but it's very difficult to do, especially in a competitive environment.
Agreed.
So that's all we have to say, and now I will just shut up for a moment and let Joe talk.
Oh baby, it's Shion. Songstress of Shangri-La, Coup d'etat Mastermind, Shion. So this is the water ruler of the set, and frankly she's my favorite ruler that we've had in this game so far. Her judgment is 3, which is 1 water and 2 colorless. And you may look at the top card of your main deck at any time. Isn't that fantastic?
It
basically
is.
it's the way I see it, it's basically like having an additional card in your hand, because the way blue works is that you always have an option to draw a card. So you always just get to see what you draw into, which is just so good. But the best part of her is when she flips. So after you spend that 3 will to flip, she becomes Coup d'etat Mastermind. You get a 900 1000, which is fairly good stats for 3. And you continue to retain that. You may look at the top card of your main deck at any time. And you then get this amazing enter, which is when this card enters your field, reveal the top card of your main deck. If it's a Resonator with total cost 5 or less, put it into your field. Otherwise, put it into your hand. So if you really need to draw a spell, you can, but the real bread and butter of Xion is you put in a big Resonator and just get a huge tempo swing off of it. So I like it. There's a lot of really good 5-drop Resonators, which we'll see in the next slide. But in the meantime, we also have a God's Art to go with it, which, man, it's just like the beautiful things keep on coming with this card. So for 2 blue, this card gains 500/500 until end of turn, then deals damage equal to its attack to target J Resonator your opponent controls. So after you then solidify Xion on the board, you have this instantaneous burst that you can apply that can clear blockers for Resonators or when she attacks. So she's really good at dealing damage. Or you can just have her sit on the board during your opponent's turn, and whenever they play like a big threat, you can just kill it off immediately, including their J Ruler. So you have a lot of versatility in that regard. Anything you want to add, Mike?
No, I like listening to you gush about Xion. Do you want to continue?
Well, I like having help, so let's go. The next slide.
Right.
So we got Hydra Monica here. It's basically a way to cycle. So it's a 0-mana Regalia. You can tap it to put the top card of your main deck on the bottom of your main deck. Basically, you go look at the top card, say whether or not you want it in your hand, you tap it, you put it at the bottom. You can do this any turn, and you could do it before or after you draw your card because of where upkeep occurs. So, yeah, you can make sure that you always have a good card on top of your deck and you're always prepared to draw something you like. And it gets even better because you can pay 1 will, well, it says 2 will there, but we'll see, and tap it to banish the card. Search your main deck for a card, then shuffle your main deck and put that card on top of your deck. If it's Xion, it costs 1 less, so that's why you're going to be paying 1 for it, because you're probably not playing Hydra Monica in any deck other than Xion. And it still gets better because you can discard other copies of Heavenly Instrument Hydra Monica to draw cards, so you get an on-demand draw function with Hydra Monicas in your hand, so you can always try and get to the card you need. And beyond that, we start getting into the 5-drops that are really important. So first off, we have Celestial Wing Seraph, the 5 will, 2 light, which is flying, and when this card enters your field, you may search your main deck for an Angel Resonator with 4 costs or less and put it into your field, shuffle your deck, and whenever this card attacks, you gain 300 life. And she's 1,000,000 for all that in one package. So you got to be thinking to yourself, what 4-drop do you bring out? Because, you know, you play Xion, you flip her, you get the Celestial Wing Seraph off the top, and then she then brings in the 4-drop. What's the 4-drop? And that would be Lucifer, more than likely, or Dignified Seraph if you want to play that, but you're not. Lucifer then says that when this card enters your field, your opponent must banish a Resonator, basically like a mini Soul Hunt, just on your opponent's side, which is really good because it basically means you get, like, off of the Judgment you get like 900 plus 900 plus 1,000, which is 2,800 attack, and then 2,900 defense, all for 3 will, and your opponent has to banish a Resonator. That's like disgusting.
And also some of that attack power is flying.
And most of it is flying. And you could run Regalia that can make Xion flying, so it could all be flying if you really wanted it to be.
And that's scary.
That's pressure, it's damage, it's... Luckily she can only do it once, quote-unquote, unless you, like, flip her back over, but you probably aren't doing that because they're probably dying from the Judgment. And the other way that they could die from the Judgment is Captain Hook the Pirate, which we got out of Lapis 1. He's 5 will with 2 water. You'll see a theme that they're all 5. Anyway, when this card enters your field, choose 1. Put up to 2 target special magic stones on top of their owner's magic stone deck in any order, or return up to 2 target Resonators through their owner's hands. So you either get 2 big Resonators off their board, or you decrease their stone count by 2. which is devastating considering that you just put 2000 stats on the board.
Probably on like turn 3 or 4.
Yeah,
So
because...
so you set them back to like turn 2, and you've got
or turn
a hook
1.
and, yeah.
And then they're kind of like, well, I might as well just scoop. And that's how the deck plays.
Yep.
But it's also important to note...
That?
Yeah, but she doesn't have to play like the drop 5 drops all day and then win. Because she also has her stone, which is Hymnal's Memoria, which is basically a basic water stone that draws a card, which is really good. And then you get to play like Ice Dragon of Altea, which we didn't put here, but that's a different story.
That's a whole nother deck. We might actually do a deck profile on that because I brought that to locals a while back.
Yep, and we can always talk about that if you're interested.
Exactly. So, all in all, you've heard Joey gush for... I don't even know how long that was. So, would you like to give Shion our lovely stamp of approval over here?
I say that's an A+.
Alright. Not much else to say about her. She sings, she battles, she cheats things in. She's good.
You always got that good cheaty face on when you got a good card on the top of your deck when you're playing Shion.
I have fallen victim to that many a time. So, moving on. We got Yggdrasil, the World Tree. Now, if you notice, we didn't put a J ruler side on here. Do you want to know why?
He doesn't have one.
Yay! Basically, instead of a J ruler, you get a built-in survival technique. Yggdrasil says that if damage dealt by a card your opponent controls would reduce your life to 0 or less, for the first time this game, it reduces it to 100 instead.
Then you may search your main deck and or hand for up to one card named Avatar of the Seven Lands Alice, Echo C, and up to one card named Blade of the Seven Lands Excalibur X, which is over there, and put them into your field, then shuffle your main deck.
What are these cards now? Well, Avatar of the Seven Lands Alice is a 15/15, so you're basically getting a free 15/15 out of your deck. It has quick cast and target attack, and if damage would be dealt to you, it's dealt to this card instead, so your opponent has to deal another 15 damage over the remaining health that you have in order to kill you.
There's ways around it, but basically that's what it says.
And then, Blade of the Seven Lands Excalibur X. You cannot be targeted by spells or abilities your opponent controls. That's huge.
Yep, that means you can't be burned,
can't
pretty
be
much.
Thundered, can't be blood boiled.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep. And, other effect, your J-Ruler and Resonators named Avatar of the Seven Lands Alice, see Exhibit B. You control gain +4/+4, so that's another 400 attack and defense on top of what Alice already has. So that's more damage that your opponent has to do to you in order to win again.
Yep.
And, to top it all off, whenever your J-Ruler or an Avatar of the Seven Lands Alice you control becomes targeted by spells or abilities, you cancel that spell or ability unless its controller pays 2, so it makes it even harder to remove Alice.
Yeah, but unfortunately, she's still pretty easy to remove.
Yep, there's a lot of removal options in the game right now, so... Of course, it's difficult to get her to stick and really make her a win condition, but playing the tree means that you have an added security blanket, so people have been playing a couple of interesting decks. We've seen Stealth, we've seen Huanglong being played, we've seen people actually throwing in Lumia to get your health back to 4,000 after it hits 100.
We've seen mixes of all three. Basically, you just play the greediest deck imaginable with Yggdrasil because you have this built-in safety net that you won't die immediately to aggro decks.
Exactly. And you can play a lot of control with him. It's a good card. It's not really... A lot of people seem to not main deck it. There are a couple of decks that have been using it in the main, which is, again, these greedy decks. But a lot of the time people find room in the side deck to play Yggdrasil.
Yeah, because basically Yig just gets a really good matchup against aggro decks because aggro is just meant to deal 4,000 damage as fast as possible. But if you have, let's say, 5,900 life, it makes it a lot more difficult.
Absolutely. Especially because the faster they get you down to the 100 life, the more valuable Alice is, because there's less room to remove it at lower mana.
Yep, and then you get like multiple Alices on board, which I don't recommend because then both of them take damage instead.
Right.
But before we start moving on to the big deck that ruined Wanderer for a bit, it's important to know that Yggdrasil is a replacement effect, which means there's no legitimate way to stop him in the current game. Like if you put him to 100 life, besides, well, actually there is one way, which is make them lose life, but whatever. That replacement effect will go off, and you can't cancel it.
Exactly. There's no. It's not a quote unquote automatic ability. It's just an ability that. It's just a condition that occurs.
When X happens, it becomes Y.
Yep. So very important to note that. And now moving on, because this is a combo in Wanderer format that was exclusive to Yggdrasil.
And it tore up the meta.
Yep. So here are two cards. One is Yggdor, Beast of the World. Yggdor is a 10 cost 14/14, but if your life is 100, you may pay 10 less to play him.
So that's free if you can't count.
Yep.
And blocking does not cause this card to rest, but don't worry, you won't be blocking, you'll be hitting the face. And the other card here is Whisper from the Abyss, which is lose any amount of life, draw a card for each 500 life you lost this way, which makes Mike cringe because he doesn't like the grammar.
The grammar is killing me. So basically, what you do with Tree, because you have this added safety net, you put your life to 100.
Well, first you play Morgiana.
Yeah, first you play Morgiana, and then you play Whisper from the Abyss. You lose 39 life, or whatever your life total is, minus 100. You draw through your entire deck.
You draw 21 cards, only taking 7 of them into your hand, but you drew through 21 cards of your deck.
Yep. And then hopefully out of those cards there were 3 Yggdor and 3 Sprint, 3 Prisia's Call to Action, which is a total of 4,200 damage on turn 2.
And they're dead.
And they're dead, yeah, basically.
And you're kind of just like looking at yourself and it's like, why did I just play Wanderer?
Yep, which is why Whispers from the Abyss was banned in Wanderer format. That card is no longer able to be played due to these crazy win conditions with Yggdor.
Yeah. Unfortunately, being able to set your life to 1 immediately is unfair. There is still a way to do it with First Lie, I believe.
Yeah, but that card won't let you dig through the deck.
It digs through your deck a little bit, but not nearly as well as Whisper did.
Right.
And your opponent can obviously always count. They can also call 3,900, right?
Yep.
So then it just doesn't work, right? Or something like that.
It's something along those lines, but again, it just doesn't do the same job that Whisper from the Abyss did. But just know that if you ever see somebody playing from Whisper from the Abyss in their Wanderer deck, call them out.
Yeah, don't let them cheat you to death and lose in 2 turns.
Yep. Important to note, though, that we really don't play Wanderer much, so we can't speak from a lot of this, but again, this is just a really important part of Yggdrasil's history, so...
And if you wind up seeing a card like Whisper again, know that the deck is possible.
Yep. But I doubt we'll see something like Whisper for a long, long time.
Hopefully ever.
Yep. So, again, with all this in mind, Yggdrasil is just a good side deck ruler in New Frontiers meta. Used to be really insane in Wanderer, but again, certain cards being banned definitely put a stop to that. So, for the fact that we've seen him main decked a few times, but mainly in the side, we put him out as a B+, just due to his uniqueness as a ruler.
Yep, he got the same grade as the other side deck rulers that we had sitting around, so pretty good.
Yeah. Definitely try him out, try building your greedy decks. Know that you do have to kind of micromanage yourself as you're playing him, but most of the time you'll be able to survive long enough to get big plays off.
If that's what you're going for.
Exactly. And moving on to the last ruler that we're going to cover from Moonlit Savior, it is the other poster boy, Conqueror of the Black Moon Gill Lapis, also Gill Lapis the Primogenitor. This is the big baddie we were hearing about all throughout Seven Kings and Twilight Wanderer. We faced all of his minions, and then he just finally decided to show up, and boy did he have an impact.
Yeah, I'd say so. So he starts out with a pretty good effect on his front side. Well, first off, he has that judgment of 1 black, 1 moon, 1 colorless, so similar to Kaguya, just black instead of white.
Again, we see the moon.
And his front side, which is a really good effect, is your opponent pays 1 more to play Regalia's activate abilities, which is like half the effect of Barrier Shadows, which is a good card.
Yeah, and you get it for free with the body.
Well, you don't get the body because it's just ruler side,
Well,
but you know what I mean.
The body. Yeah. So again, he's really good against Regalia decks. Unfortunately, due to the way that Curse of the Frozen Casket has been, Regalia are being phased out, so he's seen a little less play due to that, but still having that ability to force your opponent to pay for effects, especially like Artemis the God's Bow, paying for awakening costs with Interdimensional Vessel Apollo. Oh my god.
And Hydra Monica, which basically
Monica.
lets Shion cycle through the deck for free. If they're playing any of those decks, they don't like seeing Gill.
Absolutely. I've played against Joe a few times when I was playing Gill, and some minor salt was had.
It unfortunately, cameoing into what we need to talk about next, he doesn't keep that effect on his J-Ruler side, so once he judgments, he loses that stun ability that he has, which is kind of awkward.
Yep. However, he does get a few pretty unique effects on his other side. When he enters your field, you may search your deck for a card named Pitch Black Moon and put it into your field, then shuffle your main deck. This is kind of what Allosaurus wanted to be, but the only difference is that Veil Savaria was a card with decent effects, but it costed too much. Pitch Black Moon is a low-cost ability, but it doesn't do much besides giving you +2/+2.
I mean, it is kind of useful, just not for Gill. Gill doesn't really care about it.
Gill doesn't need it. Gill's already big. Gill's a 12/12 for 3.
And with Pitch Black Moon, he becomes a 14/14.
So he's big, it's just Pitch Black Moon doesn't do anything, and if you draw into it, it just feels bad.
And again, mirroring Kaguya, he gets the next effect, which is cancel target activate ability for 1 moon. So the opposite of canceling automatic abilities would be canceling activate abilities. Pretty good. The most notable things you can cancel that are activate abilities are like God's Arts, I'd say.
Yeah, definitely God's Arts. Because being able to cancel like a one-time thing is just so much ridiculous value, and you can get it for just 1 moon.
If they don't realize what Gill does and you cancel their God's Art, they're like, wait, I didn't mean to do that. Wait, no.
No, wait, can we take that back? No. And then for 2 will, 1 black, 1 void, target J Resonator gains -2/-2 until end of turn. That's a pretty good ability, because once you start stacking that, you can clear things off pretty well with him.
Yeah, but he already has good kill ability, but it's a free mana sink, so why not have it on there? You won't complain about it.
Exactly. And then his God's Art, which was one of the things that people were freaking out about when he was first revealed.
When people saw this, they were just like, wow, all the decks that we have right now are awful against it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's space-time control, which makes me think of like Shadow the Hedgehog. Anyway, it's Dark Moon and 2 Void. Search your opponent's main deck for a Resonator, a Regalia, and or Addition Field, and put them into your field. Then your opponent shuffles their deck. So
you get your opponent's stuff.
You take their biggest Resonator, your favorite Regalia, and an Addition Field. So you get a lot of value out of a 4 will effect, especially since one of the big decks around that time was like, what, Yamada Reanimator?
Man, Yamada Reanimator hated seeing Gill.
Yeah, people just pretty much stopped playing Reanimator decks as soon as Gill came out because he was really hyped, and Reanimator just could not face having a Yamada on the other side of the board, because that means they literally can't win.
Especially if it was like the Reflect variants, because you get full effect out of Gill's effect, because you get, well, basically you get the Yamada, you get the Orb or Levitine if you're really feeling it, and you get the whatever that field spell was that prevented your stuff from being targeted. So you just got infinite amounts of value out of that.
Yeah, there's also other decks that were pretty painful to have that be done against, like since it was Yggdrasil, you would pull Alice out of the deck
and Excalibur X.
Yeah, so you basically became the tree, which is really flavorful.
Yep, and then tree lost its stuff.
Yeah. Other things that you could do was in Shion, since you're playing a black deck already, you were probably playing Lucifer.
So you get the Celestial Wing Seraph out of their deck.
And then you get to pull the Lucifer out of your deck, and you get to combo off on them.
Yep.
And that's cute.
Those end of the board effects go off.
And you get to take their Hydra Monica, which means they have less consistency, which is fun.
Or you take their Levitines, which means you swing for game.
Yeah. It is hard.
So, again, Gill Lapis is Race's subjugator, and he does a pretty good job of subjugating your opponent.
It's probably one of your favorite races.
Yeah, I think so.
Let's be honest.
Gill's always been one of my favorite rulers just because of how flavorful he is with all the dark and moon effects that just all piece him together into this one control package.
Yeah, he's a cool ruler.
Yeah, is he great? Well, that will remain to be seen. So, moving on to support, we got his Regalia over on the side. He literally uses the Earth as his Regalia.
That's the Grim Earth, right?
Yep.
And it has a pretty cool effect, which is tap it to produce Moon, spend this will only to play abilities of J Resonators, play activate abilities of J Resonators, judgment abilities of Conqueror of the Black Moon Gill Lapis, or God's Art abilities of Gill Lapis Primogenitor. It's important to note that it's redundant. Activate abilities of J Resonators are God's Arts of J Resonators too, so whatever.
That's fine. That's a little bit of fun for you.
Yep. And you can also tap and banish the card to put Gill Lapis back on his ruler side. Unfortunately, that doesn't matter too much because he doesn't have a super crazy enter. But it could have been crazy if he did.
Yeah, it could have been insane. And if you want to try and save him from effects that would kill him, then you can, but you're never really going to use that.
It's just something to keep in mind. You have that option, like with Reflect. Like how he likes to flip back as opposed to dying.
Exactly. So again, the Earth has a lot of cool effects, producing Moon and paying for anything basically. You can pay for anything besides an Awakening.
Which is alright. Oh, and, paying for Resonators, but that's besides the point. So we got a really cool spell chant in the middle there, which is Spacetime Collapse, 2 black. Choose one, destroy target Resonator or Regalia, or destroy up to one target Resonator and up to one target Regalia. Choose the second only if you're Gill Lapis. So that's good value. What would you say?
I would say that's a lot of value if you're playing Gill, especially back when this card came out when Regalia were like the big things. Having something that killed both Resonator and Regalia was super strong, but again, back in that time it had to compete with
Stoning to Death.
Yep, which was an instant speed destroy target Resonator. Now that Stoning to Death is out of the metagame, Spacetime Collapse has that niche role as the only real hard removal we have with a similar effect. But the fact that it is not instant speed is definitely something that hinders it, but it's still value nonetheless.
Yeah, it's not a bad card, it's just slow, I'd say.
Right.
You have a card like Endless Night that for one will you get instant speed for your kill spell.
So, Spacetime Collapse has its perks. Again, a little slow, but nothing too bad. It's a good card under Gill.
Also, it's important to note that Gill doesn't really care about destroying the Regalia, so it made it a little bit worse too.
Yep.
Because he has that pay one more to activate Regalia's activate abilities on his ruler side. So it wasn't like super value since you already got value off the ruler side, but it was pretty good when you were the J ruler.
Yep. Something to note though is that the fact that on Gill Lapis's ruler side, if you Spacetime Collapse while they have no mana open, you can clear off Regalia without having to deal with their banish this card effects.
Yeah, that's true.
So there's a little bit of flavor in that. And then over there we have our direct comparison. The bottom line of Barrier of Shadows is exactly Gill's effect.
Yep, and also Barrier of Shadows will stack with that effect, so you can make their Regalia even more useless.
Again, a lot of control, a lot of subjugation.
Just bending people to your will.
Exactly. So, again, these are all basically what goes along with Gill. Gill's a very good card, but is still a little slow and very dependent on the metagame.
Yeah, when you have like a lot of aggro decks running around, stealing stuff out of the opponent's deck isn't that great, and then you just have a big body J ruler that's a little bit overpriced, but overall he's cool. I like him.
Yeah, so we gave him a B, fairly average, but again, has his perks, has his cool effects, and depending on the metagame, can see a higher grade. Unfortunately, with Curse of the Frozen Casket with Lapis Cluster bringing out more and more Regalia, less stuff, we're going to see him less and less, but he's always got a place.
Until they do get rotated out, though, you'll still have a chance to see him.
Exactly. And once Wanderer comes around, if Regalia are still as strong as they are, which they probably won't be because Levitine's banned, he's still gonna have some pretty fun times in Wanderer.
And that's gonna about wrap it up for
Yeah, honestly, that's
Moonlit Savior.
pretty much everything. Again, high points definitely Shion, Yggdrasil, and Gill. Great cards. Kaguya, a little average. Allosaurus, a little too slow.
But it's a good set. It was definitely a good one to invest in. Maybe not as good as Twilight Wanderer, but still fairly good.
I would
A
say
lot of good
now,
cards.
Yeah, now a lot of the super rares and rares from that set are actually a high value, so definitely look into that set. It's got a lot of unique features to it, and yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about it.
Yep, this has been Joe.
And Mike.
Man, that felt awkward saying it backwards. Anyway, from Deep Ward, Force of Will.
Yeah, signing out. Later.